Just about 72 hours away from the beginning of the 2024 NFL Draft. We are going to do a mock draft Monday. I'll get you mine Wednesday going into Thursday. Pete Smith from the OBR is here. We will get his, and we will do it now. Your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, and I appreciate you all for making Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. The numbers and the subscribers for the Locked On Browns YouTube page keep going up and up. The Everyday Crowd, you guys are awesome. Join the Everyday Crowd. Subscribe to the page as well. Show is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. As I said, the OBR's Pete Smith at _Pete Smith _here. Look, Pete and I have been doing these draft shows for a long, long time. So there was no way we're not going to get Pete in here this week. Get some thoughts here as everything will commence starting Thursday from Detroit, Michigan. So obviously 6 picks. Pete made all 6. Look, you can always predict a trade. It just ends up being so difficult. But Pete, went offense out the gate here. And I think a lot of people believe that's probably the way this is going to go. A, it is an offensive-heavy draft. B, the Browns not only brought back most of their defense, but kind of added to it as well. Your first 2 picks here in this mock.
Yeah, so I started with Ja'Tavion Sanders, the tight end from Texas. Sort of that jumbo receiver right now, and sort of that Isaiah Likely, Dalton Kincaid mold. Dalton Kincaid was with the Bills, which is where Ken Dorsey's coming from, so it's not like he's unfamiliar with that dynamic. David Njoku's really come to his own coming off the Pro Bowl season, and it just is another way to create mismatches. His catch radius is impressive. He had 0 drops this past year, and he's not afraid to go out and try to get the ball. That BYU catch is obviously the most famous for him. That's the highlight of him, one-handed catch, getting hit immediately, getting up and just sort of dusting off the opponent with his hand. Athletic testing is a question mark. It's not bad by any stretch. He's certainly a pretty good athlete. He's just not necessarily special. Tracking technology may have some input on how teams feel about that. But the bench press is terrifying. 8 reps for a guy that big. Not great. But I would also point out that guys like Isaiah Likely and Dalton Kincaid didn't test anything. Isaiah Likely didn't test bench. And Isaiah Likely ran a 4.8. So you look at a guy like Sanders, who was incredibly productive at Texas. This past year, his best games came against the biggest opponents, Alabama, Washington, the Big 12 championship game. He dominated in those games, the games you had to have it. I think in some ways you're taking him a year early because he needs to continue to develop. And because the Browns have Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku, Elijah Moore, and Cedric Tillman, where you can put a guy, not unlike Tillman last year, you put Sanders on the field for the things he's going to do his absolute best. You don't need him to be out there, but he just gives you another option. Certainly a really nice player, and it's just really difficult for teams to cover that many guys that are that big and that athletic. Followed that up with Blake Fisher, the offensive tackle from Notre Dame. Prototypical height, prototypical like arm length for all the people who care about the arm length. Lean looking for being practically 320 pounds. Explosive athlete. Didn't test great in other areas. His agility, I'm not surprised by. There's some hip stiffness with him. I thought he'd run a little faster, given just watching his tape. He moves well on the field. But the explosive power you want needs to get more consistent in certain areas. has the ability to play both sides, was going to be the left tackle before Joe Alt was, but suffered a torn meniscus. Joe Alt takes over, doesn't lose the job. Blake Fisher moves over to right tackle. I think the Browns in some ways are a really good situation for a guy like Blake Fisher, who's coming off playing endlessly at Notre Dame. I think they get a chance to sort of take a step back and really work on some of the things he needs to improve on. And he has to practice against the Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smiths, Okoronkwo's of the world that are going to make, figure out real quick what works and what doesn't. And if he picks that up, like, there's nothing that prevents him from being a very, very good starting tackle.
Now, everybody agrees that at some point Browns are going to address the offensive line. And, I have no questions about that. And you also think about the fact that you ended your 4-year run with Bill Callahan. You're bringing in, obviously, your new offensive line coach here in the future. You want to get a player or two for him to start to work with, put his stamp on, because he's going to be most likely, in charge of a very difficult situation of, making the next Cleveland Browns offensive line. It had a hell of a run, had a pretty historic run as far as what they were able to do. But Dickerson's going to have the unenviable task of having to make the next offensive line here for the Cleveland Browns. Now, tight end. Now, this is one where everybody, wide receiver at 54, running back at 54. Pete, I look at the tight end room. And look, if you want to, have to go cultivate and find somebody on day 3, I don't think it's going to change the room all that much. But names like Ben Sinnott, obviously, you brought up here, Sanders here as well. I look at that Browns tight end room right now, and Pete, I go back to the early days of Locked On Browns, and I say to my God, my Lord, would I kill for a Darren Fells? Or even just looking at that room right now, the way it's constructed, and saying, man, I never thought I'd say this, but I kind of miss Harrison Bryant.
Yeah, I mean, Harrison Bryant was just useful. He did a lot of things for your team.
A lot of dirty things, and especially last year when he became the 4th-and-1 guy.
Now, I would tuck away the name Joe Milton potentially to be the next Harrison Bryant, because he can do all those things if he can make the transition to tight end. But look, I'm never going to advocate that the Browns should take a player because of the need. Like, if Troy Franklin's sitting there, he's going to piss off Jeff off so much when they take him. Or Kingsley Suamataia. My issue with running back, I don't think there's a running back that's worth the 54th pick in the draft in this class. Fair. I just don't. Even the ones Jeff's advocating for are part-time players who are very talented, but 12 carries, 14 touches, they might be done for the day. That's expensive for that pick. So, if the wide receiver is good enough, so be it. But like, to me, based on what was there, it just happens to work out that the tight end fits the niche. But the thing that with Sanders and potentially with a guy like Ben Sinnott, if he were the way they go, is they can do receiver things. So you get the receiver, but it goes to a different room that like allows you to have more of these guys on the field in a different skill set where you can find places to put them on the field in addition to just having depth you badly need. So again, it worked out. I'm not in love with most of the tight ends in this draft. There's about 4 I would take, but it worked out here. So that was the thought process.
And it does kind of make some sense. And I really think it's either, you're not getting Bowers, so it's either second, third tight end, and then all these guys are going to go on day 3, certainly have their question marks. Some, who knows, guy may hit, guys may not hit. You have no idea. But we're going to roll on here. Pete made all 6 selection. We're going to get the next 2 here as we continue to roll on. Your latest Locked On Browns. Appreciate everybody for being along for the ride. It's playoff time in the NBA and the NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Yeah, I have a competitive side, and if you don't believe that, go ahead and ask Mrs. Lloyd. Okay, well, you all have a competitive side. We all do. And my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been over 150 million times. It's great twist of Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy situations, building up amazing cities that bring you money. But the best part is messing with your friends. You can charge them rent on iconic properties just like classic Monopoly. And the leaderboard shows me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. But it's just not my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in timed tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go for free now on the App Store or Google Play. Rolling on your latest Locked On Browns, your host, Jeff Lloyd. I appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. The OBR's Pete Smith is in for the ride. If you were not part of the everyday crowd by now, change that quick. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. Now, Pete, right out the box, obviously, tight end, offensive line. We all know the Browns have many areas of need. And this is always a tricky pick here when you look at the way it's going to work, the way the Browns are currently scheduled for their selections. It's 54, it's 85, and then it feels like it is a month and a week before the Browns would be on the clock again at 156. But I do love this one.
So if Jeff is looking to engage his competitive side, maybe he should pick up the eating challenge that he's been ducking for 4 years and celebrate the start of the draft when the Browns.
Jeff is 50 now. That is not allowed by medical law.
But having said that, DeCamerion Richardson, I don't know how he'll last to this pick, but based on the consensus board, he was sitting there, so I took him. His movement skills are insane.
Smooth. Everybody loves Emerson. Richardson is actually just a physically smoother mover. Martin Emerson is just a dog, but Richardson, gracefulness, athleticness, it all just plays out a little bit nicer for him.
In terms of straight line speed, he can chase dudes down, but the thing that really stands out is his ability to flip his hips and just go. He makes up ground so fast. 6'2" and change, almost 190 pounds. So it's not like he's super skinny. He is born to play press corner. He has the ability to press, and then he could potentially get beat and make up for it. But the reason he's not going earlier is because of his on-ball production. He doesn't have a ton of it. He does put dudes on the ground. He will tackle, but he doesn't finish enough plays. And then, when they have him play off, it looks a lot like Greedy Williams when he was playing off, and that he was not a guy who could drive on the football and go. He would just give up too many easy completions that you're sitting there going, just why don't you trust your athletic ability? Has no interceptions in his career, so Tony Grossi will be pissed. If you took Greedy Williams, obviously Greedy Williams, a lot of it came down to the shoulder, but if you took him in the round 5, and Greedy did intercept a lot of passes, at least early in his college career, you'd be thrilled. DeCamerion Richardson answers a question for if you were to move on from Greg Newsome, whether it's now or a year from now, maybe Cam Sutton can step in there in the slot. But what happens when Denzel Ward misses his 4 games a year? Who goes into that boundary spot? Greg Newsome, for all the stuff people don't like about him, he could easily jump over there and you were in good shape. DeCamerion Richardson is a guy that gives you that. Even if he's never a great player, this is a scheme tailor-made for him. The Browns talk to him. It's very easy. When you turn on the tape, very easy to see why. And if he can figure it out, he's got that kind of ability that makes you go back, not unlike with Martin Emerson. You go, how the hell was this guy still here when they picked him? But just and played the same school and all those things. So there's a lot of comfort there with that.
Now, with the Richardson idea, and the last time we spoke, you had talked about it. Look, you're talking about a guy that might be competing with Khalifa Lassie. And look, Lassie got to play a little bit last year. I don't think there's anything guaranteed to him. And, the Browns understand that there's going to be some cornerback decisions and conversations that are going to be had over the next couple of years. You're going to have Martin Emerson and you're going to have Greg Newsome both be eligible for free agency technically at the same time. It's something where you want to be forward thinking. Not to mention, we always say the Browns are in on the quarterback position. You have a head coach who was a defensive back. You have a general manager who is a defensive back. It just makes sense. They are always procuring that market. They are always looking into that market. They will never not be looking in that market. Pete, but the next pick here, as you know, we are on to 3 of 6 at this point.
Nathan Thomas, offensive lineman, played tackle for Emory Hunt's Raging Cajuns. I think he's going to kick inside the guard. Big boy, extraordinary power for a guy who almost never plays with proper leverage. He still bullies people. He actually tested as a speed athlete. He's 332 pounds, but his best attribute was his speed, which if the Browns want to use him as a puller, like that would be helpful. But I think double teams and things like that, that's where this dude's really going to shine. Needs to get better at bending and being just low pad level. And I think he needs some more of a professional work ethic in terms of playing to the whistle as opposed to playing to the block or playing to when he thinks he's won. But like, you can't teach that kind of power. If the Browns want to lean into that, we got to see where they really want to go with the offensive line, but he's tailor-made for that style of blocking. I think guard would help him with some of the pass protection stuff. But he's been a productive tackle for that level. I think there's a lot to like with him. And especially when you're talking about round 6 and 7, like I can live with those flaws. They're not like he was arrested for, whatever, or there's some awful things. It's motivation and some of those, like those are things you can work on. And I'm willing to take that risk at this pick. I like everything else about him. And just giving Andy Dickerson and Roy Ishtvan guys to work with that can potentially provide answers down the road, as the Browns are specifically looking to get cheaper up front. They are shifting so much of their financial burden into their skill players, which is fine if those skill players deliver, but they have so much money tied up in the offensive line. They've got to come up with answers that are cheaper. DeJuan Jones is a phenomenal start. If he can come back and play well in year 2, he's got to keep going, though. He's got to become a better run blocker and those things. But like Blake Fisher and now Nathan Thomas giving you a lot of options to try to figure this thing out. And Luke Whippler as well.
Well, and this is what it comes down to. Look, I mean, and everybody, the Browns, they make it work. They make it work. Yes, they all make it work. But it doesn't mean that everything that they view it is ideal. And, having, a guard that's making, having both tackles making double digits, or, Conklin might be a little bit less than that now. Both guards making over double digits. Ethan Posick on a really, really nice contract. It's not a question of eventually the breaks are going to beat the boys. It's eventually just being smarter. And, and there might be moves you won't be able to make. And look, if you build it through the draft and you build it right, and it grows and it manifests, it just allows them to have more flexibility to do things elsewhere. And what do? Well, you continue to rebuild the room, and you draft another offensive lineman next year, and then another couple, and you just continue going that route. And then from 2-3 years, there'll be a focus where maybe you're not now paying big time money to skill players. Now you have to invest some of that money back into the offensive line because some of these guys hit. It's just the evolution of roster construction, and Andrew Berry and his team, they've done a fantastic job with it to this far. There's no reason to doubt them at this point. But yeah, reading the tea leaves, it seems like the Browns are going to be heavily invested in the offensive line market come starting Friday night, 2024 NFL draft starting in Detroit. We're going to continue on here. We're going to get the last 2 picks from Pete. The latest Locked On Browns rolls on. I don't know if you know, but the New York Mets are 12-9, and now all of a sudden, I might have to find a way to get myself out to Citi Field. GameTime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the GameTime app actually go down closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and you get a view from your seat and their lowest price guarantee, GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. As I've said, you get a lowest price guarantee. They got event cancellation protection. God forbid you lose your job. You have job loss protections. They have flash deals. You save even more with an exclusive in-app deal on select seats ahead of the game or the event. The lowest price guarantee or GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry, the GameTime Ticket coverage is impressive. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Closing out your latest Locked On Browns, Pete Smith in here, just a few days away from the 2024 NFL Draft. Pete, all these mocks, what's the point? Pete played the slow, cool approach this year, put out one here ahead of draft week. We've gotten 4 of the 6 selections to this point. Pete, this first one here that you're going to give us, this is a name you kind of been on for a little bit of a while, and I understand the matching and the family tree, so to speak, as to why this pick would make sense. But the last one, I'm not going to lie to you, I'm really excited about the last one.
Yeah, there are thieves at the OBR who have tried to make Jason McClellan their own, but he's mine. Look, Jason McClellan's fun. Like, if you watch him, you can just sort of appreciate his understanding of the position. Like, he just understands how to play running back as a runner. But what really stands out to me is his ability as a pass catcher. You sort of get lost in it because you watched last year they had Jahmyr Gibbs, and Jahmyr Gibbs was just phenomenal in that role. McClellan just seems to understand how to make the quarterback's life easy, how to catch the ball well, and position himself to get yards after catch. His efficiency in that regard is very good. His hands are excellent. That's one aspect. He understands how to use the tools he has. He will churn his legs through contact. He will finish runs falling forward. I suspect, I could be wrong, that Deuce Staley will like the way he plays. But he has enough juice where he catches some opponents by surprise. And he played through most of this past year with a foot injury. He had to miss the SEC championship as a result. Athletic testing-wise, he doesn't really have like a trait where you go, that makes him special. But the production and the competition he's faced, we've seen a lot of these guys come out of the SEC where you're just sort of like, ho-hum, he's not one of those big guys. And then they come out and just have like a 5-year, 6-year career where you're like, oh, he's pretty good. And I think McClellan can get there. Like, he does theoretically have the potential to be a long-term starter, but I think he can just be a really nice role player. He's got more size than you think he does at practically 220. There's just a lot to like about him. And then, yes, he does have a connection to the Browns tight ends coach and pass game specialist and Tommy Rees. Tommy Rees, that was his, he was the leading rusher with Rees there as the OC. So there is a connection if Rees feels good about him. If somehow, some way McClellan ends up going undrafted, I would put a hefty sum down on him ending up in Cleveland, because I think that's just a natural fit, not only because of what he does, but also because of the things the Browns want to incorporate their offense that Tommy Rees was able to do. Jalen Carley's played safety at Missouri. He played free safety. And for people who are of a certain age, they might remember Taylor Mays. He looks like that, just in terms of just being this weirdly, awkwardly cast, giant human being patrolling the back of the defense. I mean, James Williams is another example of Miami sort of doing that. Just not particularly great at safety. He did okay. He was like the last line of defense. He made a fair share of interceptions doing that. But he likes to hit people. And he's a good athlete for his size. He's 227 pounds was his weight when he measured in, 6'2" and change. And one of the things you like about him in potentially shifting his role, he's got 34-inch arms. Like, for that position, being able to defeat blocks, certainly, but just being able to tackle guys is helpful. I think you look at him initially and you go, I want him to play in that role DeAnthony Bell does, where he's just sort of that box safety who can come downhill and make plays. Carley's, for a 227-pound guy, is a very good athlete, 4.5 speed and all these other things that stand out.
Very impressive jumps, yep.
And Jim Schwartz seemingly wants faster guys at that second level. So if he can then make the transition to linebacker, even if it's just sort of a pass down guy, that's great. If he can figure out like processing speed and just, click and go as far as run reads, then he can do that. I mean, he's got to be a ham sandwich away from being bigger than JOK already. It just comes down to what can he pick up from that. But like beyond the D'Anthony Bell sort of role, it's special teams. He's got a body and that just screams being able to contribute on special teams. He has special teams experience. You can easily imagine him being on punt and punt coverage type situations. And the previously mentioned DeCamerion Richardson should be on field goal block now, in addition to being like a gunner. But like we have, a special teams coordinator on the Browns and Bubba Ventrone, and he's going to get his way on some of these things. And I think this is an area where the two coordinators can be pretty happy with the pick, and just continue to bring in athletes and see if they can hit in the right way, impact multiple areas of the team.
Well, and where I'm going with this, Pete, which I like what you did. Now, obviously, Diabate last year, Charlie Thomas, 6'2", 230, really athletic. I'll fail on this guy. If it don't work, this is the guy I'll fail on.
Yeah, I mean, again,
because it is day 3. It is UDFA.
He led the team in tackles the past 2 years. He was second on the team back in 2021. Like, that's what he likes to do. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to bet on guys, bet on athletes who aren't, idiots, and see if they can figure some stuff out, which is ultimately what you've done with several of these positions with undrafted free agents. Like, I really like what D'Anthony Bell does, but he's also practically 28 already, which is amazing to think about because he feels like he just.
We're not talking about a second contract with D'Anthony Bell.
So if D'Anthony Bell beats him out, great. But if not, then or Carly's is good enough at linebacker where they can keep both of them, then great. You get more guys with more options. The Browns need more linebacker help anyway. If Carly's can give you that, even if he's just like what Matt Adams was, who was signed elsewhere, where he just comes in on special team, you never want him to see the field, but at least you've got that ability to potentially see if he can help you there.
No question. A lot of names covered here. Look, a lot coming this week, draft week. The intensity for me definitely picked up. My favorite week of the year. I can't even lie to you. Always appreciate Pete, his time, the friendship we've had over the years, and just spitballing players and NFL and college football and transition from college football to the NFL. One of my favorite. Always appreciate the time. Pete Smith at _Pete Smith _. Make sure you're checking out all the work over at the OBR. Your host, Chef Lloyd. Look, I appreciate y'all. You guys know it. And it's going to be a long week. It's going to be a grueling week. I absolutely love this week, though. There is no question about it. I appreciate you all for making Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. If you are not part of the everyday crowd by now, make a new plan, stand, subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on ELOB. Let's go, Browns.